Yeah, dude. Some of these movies like this one and some of the other ones in the 70s and 80s, they just get so and people still make movies like this today where it's like so much like dialogue and the story is just feels dragged out sometimes and yeah, and then in the effect is like the Bressonian kind of straight face. You're gonna just save the crying emotion like till the end. I don't know. Maybe it's good. Maybe it's great. Who knows? But
And it's good to, I think it's good to work through those feelings, interrogate what does and doesn't work about this stuff still.
sure. Yeah.
Like it's
Yeah.
okay to bring a bad vibe to the podcast if that's your truth, man. And look, you might want to go to the film experts that massage and hold up every single one of these canonical films, but some like it unauthorized. And I'm Jay Brooks Young.
And I'm Zach Domes.
And we're talking about, damn it, I was gonna look up a video where someone said his name out loud just so I could get the pronunciation, but Jean Eustache and his film The Mother and the Whore from 1973.
That's right.
His almost 4-hour epic of French Parisian relationships. Kind of almost his one-man epic, if you will. It's just us and Jean-Pierre Léaud, locked in combat. As he, does his best to just make you want to crawl out of your skin.
Yeah, for the first 3 hours and 20 minutes, and then it like switches to one of the girls as the main focus, but
yeah, the Veronica character.
yeah.
And I read a piece by Lucy Sante at Criterion, where she made the claim that the film switches protagonists 2/3 of the way through, that, that Veronica kind of takes control of the film. And I don't know if I buy that. I also, just to get to the ending first, that was maybe the weakest part for me, was her monologue there at the end. And I've seen a lot of reactions on Letterboxd and some of these critics saying that is so heartfelt. And I think she's giving like a good performance. I think it's the writing that I'm sort of bumping up against there.
Mm-hmm.
And that moment has to stand on its own, just a static camera on her giving this monologue,
Yeah.
And we'll talk more about our reactions to this film. I did enjoy it as much as you can say that, but I found myself, wanting to stay in this world and experience it. But that, I don't know. As a like emotional climax, it fell flat for me at that part. It's sort of like we have to wrap this up somehow. This is going to be our final big kick. And I was just like, that feels a little less true to me or something. I don't know. But it sounds like you had a tougher time throughout the whole thing. So maybe you had a different reaction.
No, I appreciated it. I just felt like it. What's the guy's name? Jean-Pierre, the actor.
Léaud.
Yeah, he's a good actor and everything, and I appreciate him a lot. But with this, it's just a lot of the same. It just feels. I guess the thing is, if this is voted on for the Sight and Sound. This was put on the Sight and Sound list, voted by a decent number of people.
Yeah, it's right about 100 on the critics list, and then it's like 52 for directors.
And yeah, you've got the likes of the guy who did Enter the Void.
Yeah, Gaspar Noé.
Yeah.
Linklater voted for this one.
Yeah, Linklater. Yeah. I just think like the problem with it, I think, is like it's the overrated. Like we watched that in tremendously long, essentially more of a series than a movie. Out one, but that didn't have 100 votes. That barely snuck on with like 15, and that seems proportionate. You're going to have your critics that love these types of films, but for this one, this is just one of those ones that like I don't know what I feel like I don't know what I'm missing. I feel like I
Hmm.
get it. I feel it. I see what's happening here, but I feel like I must be missing something is what I come away with.
Yeah, let's try to figure that out. Um,
Yeah. So
because
first of all, this is 3.5, more than 3.5 hours.
yeah, and I'll say I watched it in 2 nights. I split it up.
Yeah, yeah.
Um,
Which is a healthy thing to do.
now watching out one, I did feel like splitting that up hurt it a little bit, and it maybe would have won me over more if I had seen it all in one go or all
Yeah.
in 2 parts or something. But yeah, that might have helped, lessen the endurance factor with
Yeah.
this one.
Yeah, without one, what I liked about out one is it either felt experimental and weird, and then there was the stagey parts where it felt real. And with this, there's something about the acting sometimes with certain French direction that feels flat for me. Like I don't again, Jean-Pierre's acting, it's like it's good in a weird way. It's not good in like a realistic way. I never feel like I'm looking at a real person. I feel like I'm looking at a very serious energy. Like he has an energy, he has a
Yeah.
presence, but I don't feel like I'm looking at an actual real person. No, none of these characters feel, and their whole life and the story that they're living out feels to me like real at all. So it's so hard to become immersed by this story because it's just this continual rolling narrative that feels so weird and is different, and none of the acting feels alive. So then I'm like, okay, I can see why this would have been interesting for people, especially once you get to the end and they're just talking about sex and weird sex stuff the whole time. But it doesn't once I got to that point, I have not ever been to some extent like immersed by the thing. So I'm just sort of I'm basically reading captions of the story of a movie that I feel disconnected to.
Now, what's the difference between this and something like Drive My Car or What Does That Nature Say to You, the Hong Sang-soo film? Because, right, like Hamaguchi, Hong, directors like this feel in the direct lineage of something like Mother and the Whore or some of those Eric Romer films, really talky, subdued type stuff. But you enjoyed those films. Was it the length thing, or was it like those characters weren't like in their early 20s and you know
Mhm,
such, just like put upon people?
mhm.
Um,
Maybe it's like a contextual thing in terms of what the director like the budget that the director has in order to fill certain things out. So, like, with Drive My Car, I felt somewhat similar with the acting and stuff like that, but not nearly the same. I think part of it is that we're going to a lot of different places and we're seeing a lot of different people. Drive My Car, he's a teacher, and so he has a class, and there's all these other students, and there's a lot of meta scenes where he's teaching students to perform and act more subdued. Like when they do their reading, he's actually telling them within the film to read with no emotion. So there's like a play on it. Besides that, there's a lot of different scenes, a lot of different locations, a lot of different actors. With this, you have three primary actors and like a couple other people, a couple different locations. You're either in a restaurant, cafe, or like at the house. And there's just something about that like you're already cutting down so much in terms of the emotion, in terms of what, the story actually is. It's not that much of a story. It's just this guy who can't be in a relationship in a normal way. And, you know what I mean? Like it's not like it's very minimal. And then yeah, I think what's interesting is like what's the difference between this and like something like what Balthazar or like a Man
hmm
Escaped.
I thought about Bresson the entire time watching this, visually, in
Yeah.
terms of that performance style, like the whole thing. It feels totally
I
Bressonian.
think Bresson, it's like the camera changes everything. With a
Mm,
Bressonian film, it's where the camera is. how the camera moves. And that's a hard thing to describe why that works so well. Because you can replay a scene multiple times and be like kind of mystified that it works the way it does. With this, it's just a lot of kind of wider shots of a room, people moving within that room. There was that one shot that's on the cover. I think one of the covers of the film. It's when he's looking directly at the camera. So you have that switch up, and that's a moment where it's like, this feels suddenly I feel drawn in because he's looking directly at me. But then once that changes, you're back to the kind of wide shots, typical wide shots again, which is all fine. Again, it's like I get it. It's just that it's just that point where, because this is also subjective, some people will feel immersed by it and amazed by it, and some people will not. It's just how it's
I felt like I was keyed into some interesting like visual choices. There are a couple of those Bressonian like shots of hands, someone putting a record on the player, some shots of like his friends got the book about the SS, and then we get the shots of, flipping through those pages. What's that look like?
Mm-hmm.
Or them watching that film in the film, which was a weird like satire about a fictional music group that Eustache actually edited. So that's why that gets put in this film. But like we're seeing, I don't know, I think it informs who these people are, the way that we are immersed in what they're seeing in terms of media, what they're doing. Their lives are just waking up and going to work, having a coffee, putting a record on. There's something down to earth and textural about those details for me. I don't know. It maybe for me just comes down to like, I saw a blurb that said, this was a very autobiographical film before I watched it. And that kind of put me in the headspace of like examining what does this say about the director, if he is making this film about himself and he's acting in this way, and he's constructed this like narrative that, like you say, is so mundane and kind of not really a narrative. Like I don't know, that all that stuff works for me because it seems to speak to how he like feels about his life, being an artist, feeling like artistically inclined, but feeling, I don't know, kind of helpless or sort of lost and directionless. I don't know, maybe realizing his like shitty behavior and wanting to examine that and wanting to kind of just like spew all that out. I found all that interesting. There was stuff that I found relatable about this character that felt really embarrassing, where I was like, it's a little brave, a little difficult, maybe a little navel-gazy, but like interesting to say this stuff about yourself in a film. Take that to Cannes and show it to the world. And we can get more in depth about how this is autobiographical, because there's a lot of crazy details behind the film, but I don't know. A lot of films are autobiographical, and they're not, all nearly 4 hours long and just a series of different monologues and stuff, but all that stuff kind of worked for me. It felt well-informed, and it felt interesting for all the ways that's not like other films, I guess.
Yeah. I appreciate that. And I know what you mean. It's not like I hated it by any means, I appreciated it, but there's some films where it just feels like a little much. It just feels like a little much, and this felt a little much. Like when he keeps mentioning films, like he'll mention a film, either going to see one or that something reminded him of one, like every 20, 30 minutes. And when he does this, every time I'm just like, obviously this is Eustache, or however you say his name, putting this in the film. Like it like takes me out of the film, because I'm like, oh, he's just writing in what films he likes and what he thinks about them. Like
But that's
it
probably
didn't
how he
feel
speaks
natural.
in his real life conversations. We've read about
Yeah.
these guys, Godard and Truffaut and stuff, and it's just like they were insufferable
Yeah.
about it. Like,
Sure.
that was real.
Yeah.
I reference way too many films in conversation. Whether it's relevant or not.
Yeah. Well, I guess if what he's doing with this film is reflecting his own boring life and his own boring references, then that's interesting. It's interesting to, if you could be like, when a movie does something the opposite of what you expect in a way that's like, it's supposed to be exciting and interesting and all that, and you dial it back and you actually make it mundane and boring, then yes, that's, there's something there, and that's always going to be fascinating to play with that. So yeah, so if you, it's like if you mirror life directly, the art is likely to be less on the face value interesting, because art is impressionistic and story based, and it doesn't reflect life exactly. It reflects life from a completely different perspective, from an artistic perspective. So when art reflects life exactly, you're looking at a completely different type of thing, and for sure, it's always interesting to see how that makes one feel. Yeah.
Well, what are we saying when we say, reflects life exactly? Because this is a representation of something, and there are so many choices that cut out parts of life. This isn't a 24-hour feed of a guy waking up and, scratching his balls and then looking in the mirror and going back to sleep. And then, like, this is a story made up of scenes specifically chosen to kind of like create this reflection of what are this man's priorities. He really cares about women to almost like a pathological degree. He doesn't like to work. He's very opinionated. He's not very motivated. All this stuff. Like, the scenes specifically draw that out in a way where, if you instead chose to make it more Bressonian and it was more of a wordless, selection of scenes of him walking from place to place or doing a task, you wouldn't get that same impression of him,
Yeah, no doubt. I'm not thinking that the entire film is even that close to an exact representation of his life. I was more responding to the particular scenes where the character, who in some sense is an autobiographical representation of himself, says or names certain films. And you suggested that that character is naming those films in the same way that Eustache would name them. So I'm just specifically thinking of how some directors would, first of all, kind of make a character that's a little different from themselves. And then second of all, even if they did put something in there that's like a reference to another movie, they would do it in a different, they do it in a different way, a less realistic way.
Yeah. No, but I don't know. Sometimes when you get that in a film, I have the reaction of feeling like they've made this character a little more palatable, a little, more likable in some way to appeal to the audience. I like a movie that's willing to make the character, as unlikable as they might be in real life. Now, it's the gorgeous Jean-Pierre Léaud, so that's quite a leap, probably, from the real life Eustache. He's a beautiful man, Léaud, but he's so insufferable in this film.
Yeah,
I can't argue with it's enjoyable, but
yeah, and well, that's the thing. I think I do feel like with this film, and I hate saying this, and because I have friends who are like, "Why does a movie have to be like 3 hours, 3.5 hours long?" But I will say with this one, man, it's like, does this really have to be 3.5 hours? Like, it's just a question. It's just a question. We talked about Godfather recently. And that movie for sure seems like it needs to be 3.5 hours. Godfather.
Yeah.
This does not seem like it has to be 3.5 hours.
This really feels episodic, you know?
Yeah.
Out One kind of felt that way too. And Out One is broken up, or at least it had to be broken up, you know?
Yeah.
This kind of feels a little bit like a condensed television show.
Yeah, because look, okay, this is just a question. Do I need to listen to the entire song that the character is listening to to feel? And I mean, from my perspective, didn't bring me into that character's experience any more than where I was at. You know, it's like I get some people, maybe that music brings them in. You know, they're listening to that song with that character and feeling that feeling that they have when they're hearing those notes. But I mean, it just felt super, super indulgent at times.
Yeah. I mean,
I know. Oh, just to remark on that though, like I really there's a part of me that feels like if it was an hour and a half, I might have loved it, or 2 hours, I might have loved it. There's a part of me that feels that way with this, and I don't remember the last time I felt that way with a movie of being like, yeah, if it was 2 hours, a solid movie, but 3.5, it lost me.
Yeah, I get it. I mean, I don't know if there was any length for Out One where that would have worked for me. But I think the difference there is like, yeah, that actor exercise stuff that they do in Out One feels real. It feels like they're actually doing it.
Yeah.
But the rest of it, the writing, the improv feels very shallow the entire time. And in The Mother and the Whore, it all feels like it just happened. Like someone really said that. That was a real sort of conversation in some way. Like there's something kind of documentary to what he's writing here, where I want to take it all in. I'll take as much as you can give me, you know? It's like reading a book about the French New Wave guys, reading about Cahiers du Cinema. Like I want to get that impression of what was life like at that moment. You know, why did they respond to the art that they responded to, and why they want to make certain art. And I really get that from this film, and I don't really get that from Out One. Out One feels like this exercise that I understand intellectually that in no way feels like it earns, you know, a 13-hour runtime.
You gotta post that. You gotta share the things you've written about that. But
yeah, I do.
Yeah, I think I agree with you, and I guess then, you know, just a thought in my mind is like Out One, what Out One was doing felt, and again, I'm reacting to this in a way that's I'm not convinced of my own thought here, so I'm just playing around. So like with Out One, I agree. But at the same time, what Out One is doing feels different than what I've seen before. To have like a 20-minute long theater session that's improvised, then a lot of the conversations are improvised, and just the extreme length that they go to, literally, with that felt novel. With this, though, there is no novel thing being done in terms of the way it feels. It feels like a French New Wave film. They've been doing French New Wave films now for more than a decade. It doesn't roll any differently than like a lot of the other French New Wave films did. So it just feels like a 3.5-hour French New Wave drama about these relationships. Do you know what I mean? Whereas Out One is all these other things. Yeah,
you probably like Godard's masculine feminine more than this film, I feel like, because I feel like it's very indebted to that film. And that's Jean-Pierre Léaud, and that's like an hour and a half, you know?
Yeah, I know. I liked that. I liked that movie a lot. Yeah.
No, yeah. It's not groundbreaking really at all. And that reflects in the Sight and Sound placement. Like, it didn't end up on Sight and Sound until 2012, you know? It got its first single vote in 2002. It got a jury prize at Cannes when it premiered. not the top prize, but like, you know, one of the additional prizes. But it, you know, it's really well respected. I think it's a personal favorite for a lot of people, and I think it does something specific that speaks to certain people more than other films. But I think everyone would acknowledge that it's not changing the world, you know. This isn't Godard. This is one of the guys on the periphery who kind of poured himself into this thing and made something really interesting that really that might hit you, you know. It's not going to be the same for everyone, but
Right.
it's an interesting little bit of biography. We see him reading Proust, you know, reflections of or what's it called, recollections of time past, whatever. And that feels almost too apt. Like, you know, this is very Proustian. This is just, I'm going to put my personal memoir on screen and we can all hash out, what does it mean, you know, that this was the life that I lived? Does it speak to the generation, the present moment, the political situation? Like, maybe it does, maybe it doesn't. But it's an interesting document because we have this to grapple with, I guess. Someone said, like, these lives they put on screen, and they were all kind of modeled after different people that he knew, just wouldn't exist to us if they weren't in this film. Like, they would have basically disappeared, you know, once they passed away. And this is kind of like a remembrance of these people, of this moment in the lives they lived, you know?
Like a post 1968, what do I do with that time? That's part of it too. It's like he's so reminiscent of a time that just happened, and yeah, there's a sense that you have from that. If it's autobiographical too, like these people didn't know. I don't know if they really, they didn't know what to do with the fact that this kind of really remarkable moment in time just suddenly came and went, and they were like thrusted back into, I don't know, real life. Like he's commenting on how people just go to work and they're just, it's almost like, you know, he witnessed something that was once in a 1,000-year occurrence. And he doesn't know what to do with that in some ways. And he's just sort of drifting on the fumes of 1969.
Yeah. And Léaud / Alexandra / you know, Eustache is interesting as someone without a political life, sort of. He feels like a conscientious objector to things. He doesn't have a job. He doesn't have his own apartment. He kind of just floats through life, contributing the least that he can. And that's probably a result of feeling like his action doesn't matter. And that's probably, a feeling that's borne out with the evidence of what happens. You know, a contemporary like Godard was running around at the same time making his like leftist films, propaganda films. And what did that change? What did that affect, really? I don't know that we can say that it did a lot. Mm-hmm. And so, you know, that stuff can live on, but like this film, I think, lives in the public consciousness much more than the whole collection of Godard's overtly political period does.
Yeah. That's probably
like
true.
We can relate to this and kind of reflect on our own activity or inactivity politically and what it means to live in this, you know, post World War II, post 68 world.
Yeah. Although I will say, Every Man for Himself, Godard's film that kind of is like his first film of his second wave of films is pretty wild. It's pretty wild, and it's not to say that those films also, they're challenging as well. This was just like so challenging in a different way. Yeah. What was some of the research you did that you found? Anything noteworthy that you came across?
Yeah, well, so the actress that plays Veronica LeBron was someone who Eustache had been romantically involved with in the past, and he kind of said things to the effect of like he wrote this thinking about her without thinking that she would play a role in it, but that like, you know, she was someone who had kind of came and went in his life. Meanwhile, though, this woman, Catherine Garnier, was someone who he was like involved with around the time of making this film. She was more like that Marie character, the live-in girlfriend. And she actually did like the costumes and makeup for the film, and her apartment is the apartment they live in, and she worked at the shop or owned the shop that Marie works at in the film. So that, I mean, that's just like kind of one for one almost. And very sadly, she killed herself right after the first screening of this film. And following that, Eustache spent some time in a rest home, and there's the dedication to her in the film. But gosh, you know, like I again, like I've talked about it before, but like there is such a difference in like pre and post Hays Code or pre and post New Wave films where you have this different kind of language and people are meaner and more cruel to each other in a realistic way in these newer sorts of films. And, you know, you watch something like this and you just think these are horrible people, but like that was kind of real to life then. That was just how people acted and what people expected of others. And you watch this and you're like, do they just have thicker skin? Like how can they like have arguments like this and go on and live their lives without just like falling apart? And I think the answer is they did fall apart, you know. There's so much talk in this film and in other films like this of suicide attempts and being institutionalized and stuff like that. Like these sorts of people that, you know, went and lived in the city and tried to live a modern kind of liberated life or something, like they suffered. They were like live wires, you know, and they didn't have the tools or the understanding of like you're doing harm to yourself, to others, to just like put yourself in these situations. It just felt right to them to get out of that old conservative world and go find something new. But unfortunately, a lot of them, just like had a terrible time and you know, killed themselves or you know, other horrible things happened to them. Like, I don't know, that I think that stuff kind of comes across. It's like unfortunate, but it feels very real in this film.
Yeah.
And it's tough to get to feel that, to get that effect from that older stuff where everything is very theatrical and just, you know, Hollywood or something melodramatic. Like you don't need all the tears in this film, but you feel how wounding, you know, these arguments and these remarks are, I think.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, there are things that feel alien in this, like the way that they, you know, argue about his infidelities, you know, Alexander and Marie, but then they make up very quickly at the end of the scene, and then it cuts, and that's the end of it. Like, I'm just like, what is that? Like, why is that happening? But I have to assume that was like true to their lives in some way, and I think it's just like it feels so alien because that's not how people act often today. But we have to take for granted that like that was kind of how they acted. That was how some people were back then, you know?
Mm-hmm. They're like they'd be like aliens today if they were able to be brought back to life. They would
get canceled in some sense. Like,
oh yeah, the amount of objectification that's going on too. It's insane.
Yeah. He just casually says like, oh, that this previous girlfriend of mine, I beat her so hard she bled and she broke something one time.
Oh, great.
That's just tossed off, like
Yeah.
that was the world that they lived in.
Several times he tries to like unbutton her blouse or something. And every single time she's like, "What's wrong with you?"
I know. No, I had this conversation of like sex in a lot of these films feel so aggressive, so kind of like rapey to use not a great word, but like you just get the impression that that is kind of the way people acted. That was the like assumed way to be, He puts it one way when, he and Veronica are in bed, like, do you want it softly or do you want it aggressively?
Mm-hmm.
It was like a binary, and a lot of people assumed that women wanted it aggressively and they just acted accordingly. And a lot of women probably felt that that was how it was supposed to be. And they maybe even did like it because of a weird kind of social conditioning, like there are a lot of ways that these things like develop and there's a spectrum of like feelings and experiences that get kind of, I don't know, forgotten about because we live in a climate that is so different from that now,
Mm-hmm.
But I'll say also about how this film came to be. I mean, he only made 2 feature films. This is longer than a feature film, but he only made 2 feature films in his life, Eustache.
Right.
He had been kind of milling about making some short films in the 60s, and then Pierre Cantrell and Barbette Schroeder, but Cantrell specifically gives him the money to make this because he had kind of been, I guess, hired by Bob Rafelson to produce some stuff in France after Rafelson had so much success in America producing and directing Easy Rider and 5 Easy Pieces, or not Easy Rider. He produced Easy Rider, produced and directed 5 Easy Pieces, and then also produced his Last Picture Show. And he had a lot of extra money to work with, so I think he was helping out some other established people, and Cottrell had, I think, produced some of the Romer films at this point, some of his first ones, and Barbette Schroeder comes on to this. He had acted in some of the early Romer and Godard stuff, and he would become a producer and a director in his own right. But, he'd worked with Léaud. Eustache had worked with Léaud. What's her name that plays Marie had been around at this point. We've watched her in Out One, but she was in the Beau Search. Like, she was there from the new wave beginning.
Right. That's crazy. I only realized that afterwards. That's pretty wild. I was like, she looks familiar.
Definitely recognized her from Out One.
Yeah.
But then, yeah, LeBrun, who plays Veronica, hadn't really been in much, and Eustache didn't really think that she was going to play such a big part in this, but he saw the talent, and she took on this big role. She gets the big teary monologue at the end there, and that kind of kickstarted a career for her.
Fascinating.
The Cannes, where this played, was a notable one because there was some controversy about them screening The Holy Mountain there, as you can imagine. Jodorowsky has always courted controversy.
Why were they screaming Holy Mountain?
It had just come out. I guess it was just because it was notable.
It had been released. I see.
Yeah, it was kind of on its festival circuit run.
And well, it's just to because you mentioned it, did that film must have garnered attention that early on, like as soon as it was released at these places, people.
Yeah. I forget the story behind El Topo. I think that made a splash right away.
Yeah.
So I think that people had to have been looking out for The Holy Mountain at this point.
Yeah, and I think famously John Lennon gave him like $1 million to make Holy Mountain with. Yeah.
That probably, plays a part. You got a big name on it.
Yeah.
But it was a pretty crowded one. The films in competition aren't super notable. There's this weird Pacino Hackman film Scarecrow, which ties for the Grand Prix award with another film called Hireling. But the out of competition stuff was crazy. Besides Holy Mountain, they showed Cries and Whispers. They showed Truffaut's Day for Night. Aguirre played. Tuki Buki played. Lindsay Anderson's follow-up to If, notable since we talked about that film, but his like sequel to that, Oh Lucky One, played there. Fantastic Planet, we talked about the soundtrack to that on the Spirit of the Beehive episode, but that got a special award.
That makes sense. It's being French. That makes sense.
Yeah. It was an interesting festival that year.
So what won that year, though?
It was that Pacino Hackman film, Scarecrow, and this British film called The Hireling, which is about a chauffeur falling in love with his boss, his person that he drives around. I think they're both kind of like forgotten films. And this won a jury prize, but supposedly Ingrid Bergman, who was the jury president that year, did not like this film. So that feels like, she may be vetoed giving this the Grand Prix. But that struck me as kind of funny. I feel like, in a way, this is in the lineage of something like Journey to Italy, Like, she was making stuff that was very arty in the 50s. But this was a bridge too far, a little too long for her as well, I guess.
Yeah, that's just what you're gonna come back to. You're either gonna like it, and like Gaspar Noé said, it felt too short for him. So,
yeah. I had a funny experience because I had a glass of blackberry Jack Daniels and lemonade watching this, and there's a scene where he pulls out a bottle of Jack Daniels and says, "Hey, I just found out about this. This is the real way to drink." And I was like, wow, it's like a 4D film. I'm living it right now.
That's hilarious. It's smooth, man. Smooth stuff.
It's, very enjoyable.
Yeah.
Gosh, I don't know. I'm just looking at my notes, and it's so much about how, the psychology of this guy.
Yeah.
This guy that doesn't do anything, that just chases after women, just puts their feelings secondary to his own, but has all these philosophies, has all these, justifications for his actions. I don't know. It's real, It's tough to watch, but it's real.
Oh, I see. Yeah, like you were joking. He's always busy, but he's not doing anything. Like he's always busy, not doing anything.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah. It's like I lead a full life,
Yeah.
I don't do anything, but no, I'm busy. I'll have to squeeze you in.
Right.
Or when he quotes someone about I can't write by myself. I have to see faces. I have to see people. And he's like, I'm worse than that guy. I don't even write when I go to the cafe. I just go there to try to read. There's something, I don't know. I can feel this thing of being an artist at that time, being conscious of art and wanting to take that stuff in and wanting to look at the world with a discerning eye. It's tough to feel like something you make matters or has a purpose or something, Maybe it's just enough to read stuff or to watch movies, to just be an observer to that stuff, to let that flow through you. But I can understand it feeling just impossible to be motivated to make something,
Right. Well, and I mean, the movie that does this to even more of an extreme, which I've mentioned several times, but I have to mention it again because it's the same year it comes out by a director who didn't do anything else, as far as I'm aware, Bernard Kisani or Kisan, Bernard Kisan, The Man Who Sleeps. The first comment on Letterboxd for that movie is daily routine of a Letterboxd user in a nutshell.
Yeah.
Which feels appropriate for this as well, minus the kind of abusive mentality. But
isn't it funny that basically comes out at the same time that Chantal Akerman's Je te il comes out?
Right. So there's something in the zeitgeist of a kind of slacker feeling. Kind of,
just like an unmotivated, nihilism.
Yeah.
That just informs your whole life.
It's so post. I mean, I already said this, but it really does feel so post 1968 too. It's like some people went back to work, and some people were probably like, "Wait, why are we going back to work?" We were all revolting a few years ago. We all were one mind revolting against the wrongdoings of society and governments and all that. And now everyone went back to work, and the people who actually cared about what was going on in the late 60s didn't want to go back to work, but they lost half their community or more because they all went back to work. So you can see, I don't know, I can sense that split. I could really sense that split, and you can read about it and stuff too. It's like, what is the half of that community going to do when the other half goes to work?
And I think that applies to the movies too, to filmmaking. Like, a lot of people went to Hollywood, or they went into just making commercial cinema. And then, the Godards or the Eustaches are trying to make something else. They're trying to say, like, we can't just keep this, like, ball rolling. We can't just make movies like we used to make movies, like, because that, like, what does that do for the world when there's so much suffering and inequality and stuff? Like, are we just aiding and abetting and letting that world go on the way it is? And there's a way to look at, like, that sentiment and think, like, they were right in the sense that movies have just become, like, less and less important to culture over time since then. Like, it feels like there was kind of a peak in the 60s and 70s. And you chalk that up to the proliferation of media and so many different choices. And, we don't all just go to the same movie because that's all that's showing. We don't just watch the same 3 channels on the television. But also, I don't know, it's like these movies, they don't get censored. They don't matter in the same way. Like, in a way, this film is a reaction to that feeling that, like, this art can't be, I don't know, consequential in the way that it was in the past. Like, it doesn't do the same thing that it did before.
Yeah. Well, and that's a perspective too of, like, when you're young and you are just naturally, like, in any given time, just generally, the youth kind of all have a sense of, like, rebellion and connectiveness, and they're doing interesting things. There's an innocence there, and they all connect, and they'll experience music or art in various ways in the different groups that there are. There's different kind of groups within the youth, obviously, and they'll come to a movie. Like, there's so many stories of people who've listened to certain music, watched certain art, and it really impacted them. And that will always be the case for any generation, all of the youth at any given time. Just imagine, though, being youthful in the late 1960s. That's trying to fathom that is kind of impossible. So you can imagine afterwards, like, already when somebody is young and they experience music that they love for the first time, it impacts them, changes their life as they're coming of age. And they'll look back on that and think those were crazy times. That was amazing. And certain kinds of music just doesn't hit you the same way as it did when you were young. And then you just put that in, like, a cultural moment like the 60s were. And you can only imagine what reminiscing about going to Woodstock was like, or going to a protest was like. Yeah, it's sort of unfathomable. And if we've had tastes of that, going to protests or concerts or things like that. But it's, the other thing is it's become so ubiquitous now. At the time, it was brand new. That's the other thing. It was like suddenly anything was possible. And they had all the things happening at the same time. Protests, concerts, music, shows, movies, everything was going on. And immediately after, you're like, well, what are we going to do now? And you'd probably, I'm guaranteed, yeah, you would have felt like, oh my God, we did all this crazy cool stuff and nothing really changed. So what are we doing here, folks? But I don't know. I think I always have hope and I always have renewed energy when I think of how young people come to experience art, even art and music that was done in the past. Bob Dylan still has an influence on people. All these artists still do. And if the world changes little by little and it changes here, changes there, changes back, whatever, the progress may not be obvious. It may not be obvious, but if you're going to have any hope at all, you would say that it's slow and sometimes unnoticeable, but it's still there.
Yeah. Yeah. There's something about watching the stuff that you connected with get repackaged and like sold to you, and it's watered down, and it's all that stuff. And you need, like, I don't know, you do have to be discerning and try to stay connected to the stuff that isn't getting sold to you, I guess. Like the stuff that people connect to and the stuff that changes people and inspires people is the smaller stuff. And, a film like this, I think it wasn't like a commercial film, really, it was a personal piece of art. And if you go to an AMC today, you're probably not going to see a lot of films that look like this or feel like this, You can see there are places where people are making personal, non-commercial stuff. You gotta go find it on the internet. You gotta go find the local weirdos that are putting on screenings of their own stuff near you or something, But it changes. Like, yeah.
Well said. Well said. Yeah, and also, Oscars are coming up this weekend, and Paul Thomas Anderson gave it to us the way he thinks, kind of an autobiographical movie there, telling us keep the hope at the end of that movie. One battle after another, baby.
Just hold on to that iPhone and it'll be okay.
Yeah. Remember the code. Remember the code.
Well, yeah, no. I was going to make a joke about how we're recording this before the Oscars, but when this comes out, we, of course, will all be aware that One Battle won all 40-something of the Oscars. We didn't even know it was up for animated short, but...
Yeah, stole it. Stole it. Stole the good word.
It was PTA's biggest heist yet.
Whoa.
There's a way we could have gone about this where we took it scene by scene and broke down these monologues and what does it say about him that he says this stuff, or he listens to the morning preacher every morning and he...
No. What I did for you, for the listener here who's stuck with us, what I did was I lowered the bar. I took it down. And I said, you have expectations that need to be bottomed out, And so now my gift to you is by lowering those expectations. And my gift is that you may enjoy it. You may enjoy it now, knowing that it sucked. It was a horrible movie. Don't watch it. If you do, good luck. And then hopefully that allows you to actually enjoy it. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Reverse psychology type kind of thing. I'm not meaning to do it. I was honest with how I felt about it, but that's what happens when the expectations are lower. You might be like, this guy's full of shit. Why am I listening to this guy? He's full of shit. You know what I mean? And that's just how that is.
Oh, it's not a film for all occasions. It's just not. Okay? This isn't It's a Wonderful Life. This is a weird little film about a shitty dude.
She does say that at one point, though. She does say that. She goes, isn't it a wonderful life? She's down by the river. But she doesn't mean it. She doesn't mean it, though. No.
I love, they're on the phone and she's like, I like, genre movies, weird fantasy movies. They're so fake and fun. But I'll go to a good movie with you. And he's like, what's a good movie? And she says one of those like old classical French directors. And he starts doing mocking one of the big melodramatic things. And he's like, that's trash,
Yeah.
I love it. He's so true to himself, I wouldn't mind getting some coffee with this dude one time, but I would not let him be a part of my life. I don't think you can let yourself do that.
Yeah, that's how it is. That's how it is.
I'm going to keep chewing on this one.
Yeah, chew on it, watch it, chew on it some more, break it into parts, watch it in 3 sessions. That's the way to do it. What movie are we doing next?
So next we will be advancing into 1974 with Rainer Werner Fassbinder's Ollie, Fear Eats the Soul. Fassbinder, one of these exciting young German new wave directors. That might be another one where we have some polarizing reactions, but we just have to feel it out. We have to interrogate it.
Yeah. Hour 33. That's doable. That's doable. So yeah, tune in next time for some more debate and argumentation. And just kidding. We'll find out. We'll see what it is.
We'll see. Yeah. But go to unauthorizedpod.com. You'll find links to our letterboxes, our top 10 list from 2025, and other things. And we'll catch you next time.
There you have it. Catch you next time.
Peace. Wanna say.